Hi, I'm Jason Blake. I'm the East Facilitator at Cross County High School in Cherry Valley, Arkansas. My project's titled The Way We Worked. The driving question for this was, in what ways have trade jobs changed over a past century, and how have these changes affected society? To do this project, we partnered with the Smithsonian Museums on Main Street initiative. My students worked with the director of the initiative, Ms. Shannon Sullivan. The students exchanged emails, phone calls, and Zoom meetings with Ms. Sullivan in her Washington, D.C. office. As the name implies, students were researching the evolution of trade jobs in our area. We found a local source. We contacted Ms. Teresa Parker and Mr. Phil Parker, the owners of the Parker Pioneer Homestead. They own a live-action museum which hosts reenactments and educational field trips every October. The visitors are transformed into the late 1800s, early 1900s, and they take part in seeing how different trade jobs from that era were handled and how the people dressed, and they're just really brought back in time. And we decided that it would be really neat for us to work with them and the Museums on Main Street project to create an interactive museum exhibit for people to take away from there. When talking with the Parkers, we learned that while they had the educational field trips that focused primarily on elementary learners, and they also open it up to the public, and they have community members from across the state come out there to enjoy getting to see the sights and the machinery of years past. There's not a lot for people to take back with them from the park. And we kind of talked with Miss Sullivan, and we decided that what we could do is create an interactive tour map that would allow visitors and educators to take something back from this experience, something back into the classroom for their students to use as a resource to maybe create new projects within their own classrooms. So our clients loved the students' idea, but they had a request. They wanted us to frame all of this as an educational experience and not necessarily from the dryness of just a straight documentary. So when they did this, they kind of worked with different drone images. They worked with aerial shots. They went out, they walked the grounds, they took sketches, and they created this almost game-like user experience using something called Unity. And on this platform, what they were able to do is they were able to link in their videos, and they were able to create a web page that we could host on the homestead's website. And the homestead was able to, direct their users to this to be able to click. Like, if you want to see how the sorghum mills ran, they could click on the sorghum mill. If you want to see more information about the broom shed and how brooms are made, you could click that. And it took them to those resources that my students created. This was a bit larger than what most of my students had worked on before in the past. A project where they had to collaborate with classmates was something. I mean, they do that all across our school. That's the driving force behind new tech. But this was a little bit bigger than that. Now, not only were they working with Miss Sullivan at the Smithsonian, they were also working with the Parkers and trying to make sure that while they were trying to maintain the integrity of the Museums on Main Street project, they were also creating something for the Parkers that would fulfill their needs and solve the problem that they were having of providing educational resources for teachers to take back to their classroom. Another way that this was big is I actually teach 5 sections of this class, and these students were working across 5 different class periods on this project. So we had around 6 videographers, we had 3 designers, and we had around 6 people working on the actual program aspect. And those students may not all be in the same class at the same time on the same day. So they were having to implement different ways of collaborating, whether that was through Google Sheets or Docs and using Scrum boards. And so they had to, find ways of collaborating that were a little bit more than just sitting at a table with your classmates, during your collaboration time. Students did 4 days of initial field work, and they collected interviews and B-roll from the actual event of the reenactments. And they basically went out there and they worked with a group of teachers that were on a field trip out there. We basically just cold called the teachers. We just walked up and were like, "Hey, we're gonna walk around with you, and we're gonna shoot some footage for our documentaries." And the teachers were more than happy to let us tag along. We had to make sure that we kept their students out of the videos because of video release issues. But they were able to capture all this footage, and they had to put a lot of planning into actually determining what footage do we need. Because this is an annual event, and those reenactors are only out there for, I think it's 2 weeks during October for field trips, and then 2 weekends at the end of October for the actual festival that they host for the community. When we went back out there after that was over with, we were able to meet with the owners and film interviews and collect history of the actual site and what the actual trade jobs that are shown there. My students had to use a lot of video tutorials to learn how to do their different things, like whether it was doing the mapping and design portion when they used their Wacom tablets and Adobe Illustrator, or if they were, working in Unity. Some of them went to live trainings at the East Initiative in Little Rock and worked with some professionals in that field to kind of get an understanding of what they were trying to accomplish. Some of my students worked with Steve Taylor from SAU Tech in South Arkansas, and kind of hone those video editing and videography skills that we needed to, capture really the visuals to tell the story of those different trade jobs. The students had various points of research where they worked with the Parker Homestead. They worked with Phil and Teresa. They also worked with Marianne Parker and Cy Parker, and they used this resource and also used a book that was written by Miss Marianne Parker to tell the story and show exactly how we completed these jobs. They also did independent research to determine how some of these jobs had transformed over the years and what those jobs look like today. That way they could kind of relate that to modern day industry and trades, and we could see like where those started for our country. Assessments for the students included pitching to clients and returning after receiving feedback. So we took several things out to the Parkers and said, what do you think about this? And they, this park is their namesake. It's their family namesake. So they want to protect that identity and, that image. And so we worked with them to make sure that everything we did more or less met their expectations and lived up to the standard that they wanted to put forth to the community. We also worked with Miss Shannon Sullivan. She provided feedback for my students, and my students, were working to create this not only for the Parkers, but because they wanted their work to be hosted on the Smithsonian's Museums on Main Street website. And so they had to, get feedback from her and kind of tweak some ideas. And what ended up happening in all of this is we actually were asked by the Homestead to kind of take over as webmaster for their website. And that was another project that spun out of it. But the main focus of the project was creating these documentaries. The students kept journals discussing their progress in a Google Sheet, and their team had access to it. That way they could look and they could see what progress was being made over here and know, okay, so they're working on this blacksmith video. I need to move into maybe rope making, or I need to move into the schoolhouse and show how that profession was, approached. So that way they were able to make sure that they were not only, making progress, but not double working the same thing. Students also would present this to their peers and get feedback on, basically just how their videos were put together. And they wanted to make sure that the story they were telling was actually being effective. I assess the students on oral comm, their written communication, their collaboration, their knowledge and thinking in each of their specialized areas. So since this class involves students working in different specialized areas such as programming or design or videography or interviewing, I assessed all these students, kind of independently, because I wanted to be able to assess them on their particular role in this project. Students also completed a peer review to collect collaboration grades, so that way they could, know are we establishing clear lines of communication? Is what I'm doing, is it actually like transparent so everybody knows like where I'm at in the project? Am I pulling my weight in my project? And these were things that we had the students do to kind of track their own collaboration, but also so we could track, and if we needed to, I could pull a kid aside and say, hey, I noticed, you last week you might have, drifted off, or you've slowed down a little bit. What can we do to help you keep making progress? In this project, students had to take a lot of ownership over their learning. They planned and made contact with their clients and developed a deeper understanding of what it means to work with a client. They had to collaborate on a level I'd never asked them before, whether that was through clients or the project director or even their team members. And across class periods, like to complete this project, they had to really, really, really focus on collaboration, because without, solid collaboration, this just would not have happened. We're already talking about how we could rework this with a different client next year. And I feel like creating tighter deadlines is something that might push the students to improve time management. This was the first time for us to do a project of this magnitude, and also it was the first time doing a project like this through the Smithsonian program. So I was a little lenient on deadlines. They've been working on this project probably going on about 4 months now, and it's pretty well complete. All they like is their final project project reveal, like the final product reveal for their clients, and they're going to be working that out over the next couple of weeks. I probably should have, really just cracked down on a timeline, and I was focused more on the quality of the end product instead of the timeliness. And I think after going through this and reflecting on it, I feel like we could probably look at getting both out of this project. I learned students are up for any challenge when it's presented by an outside source. So if I would have came in and I would have told my students, hey, we're going to shoot a documentary, and this is something we see in a lot of our classes. We see a lot of, student created film, and typically when it's just, I'm making a documentary for, showing my class, it's going to be my end product, and I'm just going to do a book trailer. Like, students take some ownership over that, but it gets real repetitive. With this, they were looking at it from the point of view like, oh, I actually have a local client who's looking at this and who's assessing like my work. And I'm also looking at it from the point of view that we're working through the Smithsonian Institute. So this was a little bit bigger than just saying, oh, we're going to make, a 30-second video. These students made around 14 separate videos that varied from 3 minutes to 6 minutes in length. And these had to be quality projects. They didn't want this to be, shown on a national level and people look at it like, ugh, that was something that they were able to take some pride in this, and they were able to say, you know what, we want this to be more than just another classroom activity. And that was really what I got from the students. The students really stepped up. They worked, during their class time, obviously, but the students spent a lot of time after school working on this. They spent a lot of time on their own working on this. They came weekends and worked on this. And it was really neat getting to see them have that drive and that push to make this happen. So if you're unfamiliar with what EAST is as a whole, EAST is a very, it's a class that is kind of specific to Arkansas. It has branched out some, but Arkansas is primarily where it's found. And some of the standards my students were looking to hit on this is that students can understand and appreciate the skills of diverse team members, and that students use an adequate number of variety of research sources, and that they were able to, analyze their resources and determine the validity and relevance to what they were doing. These students were also in this class asked to incorporate technology, which is where they, comes in with the web pages and working through the videography and creating the different programs that they created to make this happen. So if you need any more information about that, I'd love to get it to you. You can contact me, and hopefully here in a few weeks we're having a release on the Smithsonian website, and hopefully you can check that out. Thank you.